So we're recording this, and Robin is a great Detroit poet and friend, and he also records, and then he puts titles in and stuff afterwards, which he's just given me the newest one. So I will post that from the last reading, the Ron Padgett one. But that was one that, you know, Ron Padgett was freaking out and emailing me saying, I can't get in. And anyway, so that was a problem with that. Can you be seen here? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So, and also if you're going to watch on Facebook, just try not to watch yourself because it's delayed a bit behind your lips moving. And we're going to go live here. So everybody for now, mute yourself and
No, they're going, no, we're going live now.
you know, actually, maybe we'll go with you, Mona, right after the student and then Carolyn, because you're going to do a segment.
I'm gonna do a poem and that piece that we just did. That's all I'm gonna do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. We're live now streaming to Facebook from Zoom. We've got some guests in the studio with us here, or the Zoom room. But most of you are watching this on Facebook, and you can watch it and rewatch it and enjoy it several times over. I'm ML Liebler. I'm the founder and director of the All Access Cafe. The All Access Cafe for the uninitiated is a program that I started with Knight sponsorship a couple of years ago now, and with the sponsorship of Wayne State University's College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the English department at Wayne State, Poets and Writers, the Detroit Public Library main branch. These are all sponsors of this program that we used to do live at Third Man, which is behind me here. And let's see, I have to, well, only I'm on Facebook, so I don't know why that is, but we'll have to change that somehow. Bear with us, folks, for just a minute. Now that will put everybody in. So anyway, we're going to start though momentarily with a student poet from Dearborn School. My daughter, who is their teacher, is going to introduce her to you. We're just trying to figure out how to spotlight or pin the poets who are performing or reading together. And so just bear with us as we do this. And that way you'll get to see everybody with Mona Jean Cedars, who is our signer, who's been with us, who was actually part of the creation of this process. And she didn't know it. So let's see, hit that, see what happens there. Okay, so now Mona Jean is on the screen. You don't need to see me on here right now. So that's the program. The idea was to bring together well-known artists with a word that is much despised, I think, by members of the community, but the differently abled, and expose them to different audiences, and then more importantly, bring all these different audiences together. So that's the process of what the program is all about. And we've done it live, and our other co-sponsor is Third Man. So if everybody is ready to go, I'm going to try to have my daughter introduce Meena El Mubarak to you. And what I have to do here is pin her. So this is
All
Shelby
right.
Liebler.
Hi, I am a Dearborn Public Schools teacher, and I met Medina's family because I had her brother Mohammed in class, and then I was reading her poetry online through her mom's Facebook. And this is going to be a real treat for everyone. She is a 5th grade student. So while she's reading this, have that in mind and know how powerful her words are as a 5th grader in Dearborn Public Schools. I'm really proud that she's here. This is her first real big reading, and you are going to make all of us real proud in just a moment here. So here she is, Meena El Mubarak.
This is my first reading. I am Black by Meena Mubarak. I am beautiful. I am loving. I am adventurous. I am confident. I am kind. I am Black. All of us are unique, so you can stand with us or you can stand against us. We will not fight you. We shall stand our ground, but we shall not convert to what is the real enemy, hate and violence. Martin Luther King once said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." So you can continue to hate us, but we will not hate you, for we know what is right, and we will overcome. My second one, Our Raised Fists by Meena Mubarak. We've raised our fists in the air, and yet we still have to. And each time we did for equality and for freedom and for truth. We raised our fists in triumph when we took the road to freedom led by Harriet Tubman. We raised them for inequality as we watched Rosa Parks walk down those bus stairs in cuffs. We raised them for truth as we heard Martin Luther King Jr. say his words of justice in Washington, D.C. We raised them in happiness as Muhammad Ali walked out of the ring with a belt in his hands. We raised our fists in fury as we watched a cop end the life of George Floyd. Our raised fists have been cuffed, scarred to the bone, and put in shackles. But each time we rip off those cuffs, we suck up the pain no matter how much it hurts, and break from those shackles, and once again, we raise our fists. My last reading, The Mountaintop. The mountaintop is where you stand looking down at us. You see us as a worthless band. But we're nothing that should bother you because you stand condescending upon the mountaintop. And as we ascend, getting closer with each step, you push us down, and down we fall to the bottom crying help. So far that you can't hear our shrieking screams for freedom as we tumble down. You, because you stand privileged upon the mountaintop, by Meena Mubarak.
Thank you. Thank you, Meena. I appreciate that. Well, I'm still trying to figure out how to have Mona Jean on the screen with the signer. It's not happening right now. It's only on my screen that way, and I'm not sure why that is. Now to be fair, we only do all access cafes every couple of months. And it took us a long time, Mona, Jean, and myself, to figure this out. But we'll try to figure it out. Right now, I know Facebook people are just seeing me or the reader. But fortunately right now, Mona, Jean, Cedar, and her husband, the circuit vendor himself, Jeff Boynton, are going to perform for us live. So let me, okay, let's see, go ahead, say something, Mona.
Hello. Are we
Okay.
good?
Yep,
Okay, cool.
I think so.
Okay. I'm going to do two things. First, because this is Women's Month, I'm going to perform a poem I wrote for the very first Women's March. And I was lucky enough to be part of the chaos that was in Los Angeles when 100,000 people marched. And I ended up on stage interpreting. So that was a beautiful thing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna make my phone. So I wrote this poem and it's called We Women Marched. I didn't want you here for this. Okay. So there we go. We women marched. We have fought this war before, and we will fight and win again. We who don't believe in us versus them, in might makes right, and the most toys win. We believe in together is better, in love conquers all, and that greedy is evil. We know all people are equal. Man, woman, child, all wild animals equal, having the right to life. We women marched as mothers to teach our daughters of their hidden powers, their secret army with them always. We women marched with men who know 'tis their duty to defend the dignity of all women. 'Twas she who gave them life. We women marched, well, more like meandered, mingled, friendly feelings flowing freely, relieved, no need to deceive with false facade, joyous to shine in the sea of shine. We women marched to show the few our millions, not to instill fear, but awe. No, we are here and we are not going anywhere. We women marched. We have fought this war before and we will fight and win again, never acquiescent, silent, subservient, for we are defiant now. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to do the second thing, and it's this is a world premiere. So I wrote this poem, and the point is this poem will be performed in several different sign languages. I have a sign dance company, PASDASL, PADASL, Dance of All Sign Languages. And so I have Russian, Israeli, French, Mexican, and India, maybe Ethiopian, Korean sign languages that will be performing the same concepts with different signs. But right now I can only do ASL, American Sign Language. So also I'm lucky because my husband is a musician. So I said, honey, dear, I'm going to create this poem, and can you kind of make some music for it? So there's my husband, Jeff Boynton. I'm going to stand. This isn't, like I said, this is very rough. This is our first time showing this. We actually finished creating the music and making it fit last night. So here we go. Let's see.
Hi, I'm Alice and everybody.
Oops, wait a minute. Let me pull this up just a little bit. Okay, does that work? I can't see anything.
Yeah,
Oh, do we need to start this?
yes.
Okay.
I think you can just hit it.
When your world's turned upside down and you feel you can't find the ground, slam back, block broken down, breathe, perceive, receive, conceive. Used to live life fast and fun, busy doing, on the run. Trouble hits and it's done. Breathe, perceive, receive, conceive. And when the commotion has calmed, our thoughts is highly peaceful. Our thoughts turn inward and we search. And in this sacred silence, we plant seeds of spirituality, and the world opens. Breathe. Perceive. Receive. Conceive. We learn new skills of connection, a new language of inclusion, a new global vision. And together we will make a new global glorious celebration. Breathe, perceive, receive, conceive. Okay. A bit rough.
No, it's good. Mona Jean Cedars, I got to unpin her. And thank you. So Mona Jean, I didn't get a chance to formally introduce her. One of the side things to our Facebook friends, it was on privacy, so it's now public. So hopefully you're able to see and hear this. Next, I want to have Carolyn Walker read. I'm still trying to figure out how to put the signer next to the reader, and I'll be working on that in the next few minutes, but right now it doesn't seem to be really happening. So I'm going to introduce Carolyn, and I want to, for all of these poets, because some of them are new to you, or you may not know much about them, I wanted to, say a few words about each of them. Carolyn, I'm getting a lot of emails from people who can't see it, or they thought they couldn't until now. So I wanted to give a little bit of a background here on on Carolyn. Carolyn is a Kresge Award winner from a couple of years ago, a Kresge Fellowship, which she got in creative nonfiction. And she also has finished that book and published it. And it's a fantastic memoir about herself and her daughter, as she's going to probably acknowledge and talk about in the piece and in the intro to it. She's from the Metro Detroit area. She's a longtime member of our literary community, and I'm really happy to have Carolyn Walker. Please welcome Carolyn Walker. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep, you're on the screen.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming, and ML, thank you for hosting this. I will be reading just 2 short chapters from my book, A Released Sparrow, and there's a little bit of background you need to know before I get started. One is that my daughter was born with a rare mental retardation syndrome in 1977, and the syndrome affects her features the same way that a Down person's features are, how they all look alike. It's the same for Jennifer's syndrome. There is a reference in this piece to Flowers for Algernon. My husband and I, before we were married, went to see that movie, excuse me, at the theater when it first came out. And if you're unfamiliar, it's the story of a man who has mental retardation, is kind of brought to genius level through science. And then also a mouse at the same time was the experiment. And in the end, the mouse dies. And the third thing is you need to know that Jennifer was a huge fan of the Titanic. I'm not quite sure why, but so the first small chapter I'm going to read is called A Moment of Astonishment Hung in the Air. By the time Jennifer was an adult, we, her family members, had begun to hold her up as an ideal. The realization that her experience of life might be something to envy rather than pity had crept over us like warmth from an ascending sun. We had come to recognize the wholesomeness with which she knew life, to admire the way she unabashedly embraced it. Another person's color, nationality, religion, sexuality, age, gender, or station in life was of no consequence to her. There was no place on earth that didn't have its merits. There was no task that wasn't worth trying. There was no person who couldn't be befriended, and there was no fraction of time that didn't contain some measure of joy. Everyone should be like Jennifer, we would take turns saying. Therefore, when a letter arrived at our house suggesting the scientists were on the verge of a treatment for Tabby syndrome, we found ourselves amazed but indifferent. I was on my way in from an errand when my hand plucked the letter from the mailbox. My thumb tore through the envelope seal. Unsuspecting, of course, I opened the letter and read it with bland curiosity. It had been sent by a mother representing the RTS parent group that had grown out of the Cincinnati conference with Dr. Rubenstein. And as I read it, I was jolted into the moment. It said, RTS is caused by a mutation in the gene responsible for a very important protein called the Krebs binding protein, or CBP. Individuals with RTS have less CBP than they need. Earlier this summer, 2 highly reputed research teams published their results of projects that proved CBP has a critical role in memory and learning. Both teams were successful in restoring and ameliorating some of the cognitive and physiological deficits in RTS mouse models by administering drugs that are currently being tested for us on Huntington's disease and cancer. Both teams suggest that the mental retardation associated with RTS may in part be a result of the body's lifelong need for functioning CBP. This scientific discovery has the potential to change the lives of people. There are no words to explain what it is like to learn long after falling in love with your disabled child and seeing her through thick and thin into a reasonably stable adulthood that maybe someday she might not be retarded anymore. An image of Don and me, innocent as 2 cherubs, watching the scientifically enhanced Charlie and his dead counterpart, the mouse Algernon, flitted out of dormancy into my consciousness. Could the makings of fiction possibly become our new reality? I called Holly. Desperation shares me overtaking me as I waited Don's arrival home from work. I whispered her name into the phone as if I were blowing out a candle. Holly. She responded yes, The way she said it clearly indicating that she sensed I was about to say something unexpected, something important. I could feel in my flesh the intensity with which she listened. We were as connected by the telephone line as we once were by the umbilical cord. I just got a letter that says scientists have found the cause of Rubinstein-Tabby syndrome, and there is a potential treatment. A moment of astonishment hung in the air. What, are you kidding? She said, read me the letter. I read it, the words sizzling as they left my tongue. When I finished, our reactions scattered like mercury dropped on the floor. We had no time to gather or discuss them. Don walked in, interrupting our conversation. I kept the receiver to my ear and passed him the letter, my few words conveying the gist of it in an exaggerated whisper. They think there's a treatment for Rubinstein-Tabby syndrome. I watched his eyes go down to scan it, watched them surface, 2 divers coming up for air. He handed it back to me with his typical shrug and went to put water on for tea. I followed him with my eyes, anticipating a reaction, anticipating that he, like me, would be mind-boggled. When none came, I disconnected from Holly, stepped away from him, and cradling the letter in my palms as I would an open book, took it into my office, slipped it back into its envelope, and then into a drawer for later consideration. It took a full day for the information to sink in. Holly called back the following afternoon. Mom, she sounded hesitant. What's it like? What does it feel like after all this time to finally know how to answer? Of the many words, of the implications contained in that letter, it was the word protein that came to the forefront of my thinking. I pictured a genome. That is, I pictured what my imagination believed to be a genome. And in the center of all its DNA and genetic code, I saw a 6-ounce hamburger on a bun. I wondered, has Jennifer had a lifelong need for a functioning hamburger? It's silly, I know, but I couldn't, in my wildest imaginings, fathom where it must have been that a protein had gone wrong, nor could I fathom its godlike powers. I said I don't know to Holly. I raised my eyebrows and threw a hand in the air as if she were standing in front of me and could see the gesture. The letter, of course, had been sent to other parents of children with Rubinstein-Tabby syndrome, and I wondered how they responded when they received the news, standing in their kitchens, wearing their shock-like Halloween masks. In addition to explaining the important information, the letter asked for donations so that the researchers could complete their projects. It showed an emotion-tugging photo of the letter writer's son, his face a version of Jennifer's, a version of every person with RTS who had ever lived. The mother's hope reached off the page as if it had fingers and touched me. We sent the requested donation and then occasionally talked in hypotheticals. Is it better to be innocent or learned? How might Jennifer feel to wake up a new person and to recognize all that had been amiss for so long? Could we bear the thought of releasing the child we love to a different version of herself? It was good after 30 years to know the cause of RTS, but any real chance for a cure seemed remote, unpredictable, and unnecessary. An invasion into the love we felt for Jennifer. Without ever mentioning the letter to her or seeking her opinion, Don and I abandoned it to the collecting of dust. And the next chapter is pretty short. It's called Jennifer's Best Day. Jennifer begged me, sometimes overtly, sometimes slyly, to take her to see Celine Dion in concert. She had learned while listening to the radio at Claudia's house that Dion was headed our way in September, shortly after my birthday. Jennifer had taken to suggesting that one occasion deserved the other. And then it will be your birthday, and then we'll go see Celine Dion, she would say, mischief and expectation alive in her Rubinstein-Tabby face. I knew that seeing Celine Dion in person would be the most exquisite experience for Jennifer, whom I felt after a lifetime of challenges deserved to have this wish fulfilled. I had tried for years to get her to explain her fascination with the Titanic and My Heart Will Go On, but she was unable to. She couldn't articulate her thoughts and emotions or the associations the song provided. She could only play the song over and over again as if she couldn't get enough of it, as if it quenched a thirst. I bought 3 tickets and a friend and I took Jennifer to the concert on a lovely warm evening. Don, a homebody, chose to stay home, And if I live to be 1,000 years old, I will never understand how he could miss what we both knew would be Jennifer's greatest delight. Jennifer bounced in a stadium seat between my friend and me, her eyes absorbing Dion, long and slender as she cavorted on stage in the distance. For over an hour, she had sung her way through some of the songs Jennifer knew. She noted each one she owned, sang along with a few, but I knew she was waiting for My Heart Will Go On. She was electrified with anticipation. Occasionally, she leaned into my ear and said, "She's going to surprise me." Jennifer was certain Dion was going to sing especially for her. But as song after song began and ended, she worried that her favorite was going to be omitted. She scoured the program and found the coveted title crowded amidst dozens of others, positioned in an artistic font at the back. She gestured at it with a forefinger to remind me of its importance. At one point, swelling with joy, she leaned over and hugged my neck, kissed me on the cheek, and clearly said, "This is the happiest day of my life." The suspense was almost more than I could bear. Finally, Dion sang what appeared to be her last song, not My Heart Will Go On, but a Motown tune meant to leave goodwill with her Detroit audience. Her face lit up a screen in front of us, while Jennifer's, now crestfallen, cascaded down her chest and into her lap. I leaned into Jennifer to say, hoping with a hope like Peter Pan's when the children clapped Tinkerbell to life, "I think if we call loud enough, she will sing the Titanic song." I demonstrated a robust yell, feeling confident that Dion had saved her signature song for the encore. The concept of an encore was one I couldn't explain to Jennifer through the noise of the thundering crowd, although I tried. She followed my yell with an urgent hoot, and then it happened. The auditorium, its lights darkened, shrank around my daughter like an iris around a pupil. I became part of an eye that focused on her as the words and notes of My Heart Will Go On arose from their source to alight on her like a mist of perfume. Jennifer gave off an unmistakable glow colored in the pinks and yellows of a ripe peach. Her face went still. She swayed her arms and hands above her head and turned her eyes heavenward, held this pose like a saint seeing a vision. Jennifer had gone to a place where the rest of us could not go. She was deep inside the Rubinstein Tabby body that once so puzzled and unnerved me. Jennifer had gone to dwell in her happiness. I will admit, had she invited me to accompany her, I would have followed. And that's the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. I always like to have Carolyn do these programs because I love that book so much. And I would encourage you, want to hold the book up again so people can see it? Yeah, Every Least Sparrow is the memoir, and it comes out of years of writing and of course, thankful to the Kresge Fellowship, I'm sure you were and are, to help complete it. So thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn
Thank you.
Walker. And you can get these books at BookBeat if you're local. If not, there is a website that you can use to order books from your independent bookstore during the pandemic. And I don't know that off the top of my head. Maybe someone can put it on the Facebook comment. It's bookstores.org or something of that nature. Okay. I want to introduce to you now a person who I know a lot of Detroit folks are familiar with him. And, you know, with Paul Guest. And, you know, actually, Paul, I discovered after we had connected with each other that we both kind of started off nationally in ways with the New Issues Press. My first book was not first book, but one of my first books was with New Issues, and Paul Guest also started with them as well. Here's a little information. He's born in Chattanooga. He is the author of 4 poetry collections, most recently Because Everything is Terrible, 2018. His first collection, The Resurrection of the Body and the Ruin of the World, New Issues, and it was awarded the 2002 New Issues Prize. Notes from My Body Double, Bison Books, was awarded the 2006 Prairie Schooner Award. Of his poems, poet Bruce Smith says, they meditate, meditate, they hover, they extract the juice from the fractured self. His memoir is One More Theory About Happiness from Echo Press, 2010. I highly recommend that to you. It was selected as a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writing Programs. He's a Guggenheim Fellow, a Whitting Award winner, and guest editor for Poem a Day, July 19th. He now lives in Charlottesville, Virginia. Please welcome Paul Guest.
Thank you, ML. It's always interesting to do a reading by Zoom. So thank you, guys. I uploaded the PDF to to the chat room. So if anybody wants to read to download the PDF within the chat, I think so.
ML,
Can everybody hear me okay?
ML, can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes, I can, Mona.
Because I was still seeing Carolyn pinned.
Yeah. No, Paul's on.
Okay, I'm
But
sorry.
that's fine. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, Paul, take it away.
All right. Thank you, guys. Let me bring my poems up and we'll get started. All right. So I'm going to start off with a poem from that first book that ML was talking about that appeared in a book by New Issues, Western Michigan University, Kalamazoo, Michigan. So anyway, it's called Pinocchio. Once I was wood and my heart was a knot. From a block my brain was slowly cut. Legs, arms, knees, and nose, my all of me peeked out at the prompt of father's blade. Peach soft, I took shape like a lesson. I took paint like skin and soaked it in. I had a hat, shoes I didn't know were heavy, strings at every joint to tie life to me. 50 kites I could have made and been happy. But this too was me, lacquer and dead stare, dreamless in a crude heap, a false boy. Like a narrow bed or bad wish, my father made and unmade me. Weeks he didn't sleep with me in the house. How life took me, I don't know. No star or fairy made of moon fell upon me to make me this long-kneed shadow. No cricket sang to my pink ear in the dark. Of the dark, I have so much to say. The strings burned away, hissing like wet fuses. And for those moments, newly lunged, I breathed hardly at all in the dying light, there in a pile of dust on my father's old desk. In places, the paint still hung in flakes like ash. A stranger would have thought me rescued from a sudden fire, or mourning something ancient. And then it was gone, the light, and I was alive, filled with hollows I hadn't before. A mouth and belly, a windpipe, my spine, once balsa, now bone, saw to line itself, flickering pain. Into the floor I spilled myself and was ashamed. My father found me and with me wept. To my little bed he carried me and locked the door. All you've known of me is wrong, or a lie, the sin that so long kept life from me, life which swallowed me like a well, with nothing to make light in its dark gut. Not my father's lantern and not my body, once wood, which may make a fire, but not a boy. This poem is called Elba. Elba's from my second book. When she tells me her name, I'm thinking of Napoleon's exile there, of his hand in paintings oddly tucked away, and the vague memory that it meant something once. I'm thinking then of Bugs Bunny aping Bonaparte, and how as a child I laughed but did not know the thousands dead in his name. I'm thinking not at all what she would like, kneeling there in the aisle of this plane, when she asked me if I was born this way, and who in Chicago takes care of me, a wife, a girlfriend. She knows one or the other is in my life. When I tell her which two white ring bone are fused, wired, made one, I can see her ardor marry grief, and I want to save her from my life. I tell her the some now think Napoleon died of a hormonal disease, slowly making of him a woman, his body wide, smooth, hairless, with breasts a physician thought beautiful. And though she smiles, I cannot tell which story she no longer wants to know. And this is also from my second book. At night in November, trying not to think of asphodel. I'm no use for parties, for the idle language, which is all how hellish are the days, and dark, or where did I find that thread count, or what do I think must be done about, etc. So I smile and nod and never say much, happy to be thought impaired or mute. And when asked to name what I couldn't live without, where I marooned on a desert island, I say viable organs. Not a book in its pages, slipping from cheap binding, and not an album that's not an album, but Summer's Totem Forever, and not one deaf lover, and not the red ringlets of her hair let down in a grotto beside the sea. To be consigned there, to that island, at home, to the fetish of consolation, is nothing I ever want to want. To be stripped of desire as if it were a bandage. But here in the night made of alarms, a train shambles through the dark, and it's hard to hear the trees speaking the language we made for them, or I did, thinking of you, who taught me regret. There are nights when I dream of stolen oranges, how we ran away with the sun in our arms. And there are nights when I can't speak, not even to the wind, in the strange tongue of the dark pine trees. And this is a newer poem. It'll be in my next book, called For the Record. My name is all this air and shaped sound in my mouth like an invisible mill. And most days I tell no one how to get back home. Which way in the night to go that will avoid the silent river and bad neighborhoods and the tracks which bend and groan beneath the tiresome weight of trains. I show nobody my hands and touch nothing with them, but I'll tell you about them. Tell you, strange soul, what they're good for, which is almost nothing. I live for this future day. The sun is the sun, distant and brutal, and in the sky too long, and the grass is soaked with rain like a terrible accident has just happened in this timeline, and no one has figured out how anything might be properly repaired. See, one world is much like the next, and the ones after that are pretty much the same. They persist. I was talking about my hands to you. I was saying I was going to describe the slight pink glow of them in this spring, how still they are, how I forget them most all of the time, even though there they always are, the ends of my arms, in the soft tide of sleep, not opening up, no. What am I worth is what I'm asking the world, this one with its secret societies and ranked currencies and delightful balls about which I'll whine like a tired child. Oh, sleep, it was to you I could have predicted my illustrious return. The manic burning of the stars and the beasts in the fields falling into horrible shade, and my body, which I practiced like a lie. I want to say something undeniable. Someday, one day, life I love. And this poem this probably comes from paying too much attention to the news. So I wrote a poem for Tucker Carlson's face. So nothing anymore makes sense, let me tell you. Is it a secret what you love or loved you like a medicine, a flame? I am so committed to this moment in which it's easy to imagine violence. In movies, getting punched seems to hurt just a little, mostly as impact, slap of meat on meat, then an instant sleep in no dream of crushed knuckles and blood and pain that will always linger. When you're old, grows worse. When you press close to a future warmth and tell everything about a previous life. I floated in space, I won. The ocean was lavish then, and not dead, and not memorial to this ruin that seems to be encoded within. I'm afraid of you, what you mean. Last night, the moon hung in the sky like a glowing fraction and a stranger asked me if I believed in fate. I thought of the night I spent in an emergency room years ago, a man lay sobbing with a hunting knife deep in his shoulder. My heart is broken, he sighed. Let me go, let me die, let me out of here. What he wanted, I did. I do. And when I was 12 years old, I broke my neck in a bicycle accident. I flipped over the handlebars and injured my spinal cord. And so a recent project I've had is writing a poem for each year since 1986. And I'm going to close this reading with a few of those poems. And this poem is called is 1986, the first poem I wrote in that series. But I broke my neck. 1986. I think about the man who must be dead by now and his undifferentiated son, and how they sat beside one another that morning I nearly died in a yard. I never learned his name, hair color, where he went to church if he did, and this morning I am thinking about the ethics of giving him a minor limp. Some old wound that healed wrong in another life, tendon that snapped in a filthy alley in San Juan, 1967. The light was different then because the sun was. Everything was. Years before my birth. Years before Elvis died on the toilet, his body ruined and ruptured. And even though I grew up in Tennessee, I've never been to Graceland. There's so much in life to regret, to desire unto pain, to ignore also. There I lay in the weeds of the ditch like garbage, my body harmed forever, though nobody could really believe such. And I felt little, some ache, but mostly nothing, a spooky lack of weight there on the summer hot ground. I think there was panic in the air above me, like a ghost, and I struggled to breathe. Do not move me or pick me up or touch me, I begged the old man. Something is wrong. Something was wrong with the bicycle, and now inside me was something terrible and lasting and final. And I think I wanted it all to be a bad dream. The way my head fell over when they stood me up, the horror when I collapsed. There was no blood anywhere, no visible wound, just a boy in yellow surrounded by strangers. And this poem is the next year, 1987. I began to die then, I think. I was asleep, dreaming of an afterlife that revives my flesh into what I'd wanted. Why do I think of Ronald Reagan the way one recalls vague nightmare, the sick heart and terror which is percussive? Was this the year I saw him at the airport? Men grimly tested my body for hidden death, waving a wand up and down. My left arm healed wrongly, and it was surgery that put it right. Look, if you want, at the pale stippling of scar there. Some nights I wake and everything hurts a little. It's amazing how long a ruined thing will burn. In the night, there are words, though I've often denied their shape, their sound. My soul, whatever it sings, is singing. It was 2000. By cartoons, I was promised flight in cars that weren't really cars, were they? Aloft in the smog brown air of the future. I'm thinking of apocalypse when it shouldn't be. Everything is soaked, is flooded. The earth is about used up. Let me tell you about my Republican life. Mostly, it's perfect and kind of amazing how unconcerned I am with you. Stay out of my bathroom. Stay out of my green state, which looks like a cross between Missouri and Afghanistan. I'm not sure what you just said in the rain to this cosmology armed by wealth. Once I was filled up with longing, with broken bones, with a song in my fat heart that has no words. Once I waited in the yard beneath the blood-colored moon, and in the darkness there was shrieking. I love animals. I love this place. Whatever it is that is already dead, I love it. And thank you guys again. And this will be my last one. And it's for last year, 2020. Maybe you need to embrace disappointment, the way you don't sleep at night dreaming of dry dust on furniture and the pleasant odor of plywood and what it feels like to peel skin off your thumb. Maybe you should begin that perfect novel which will save you, pluck you from the jaws of a monster that is right there beyond your failing sight, Not today, Satan, or Ronald Reagan. You learn that often enough, even evil is not about nuance. It was raining the day I was born, and years later, I haven't learned much more about the stars. Fire and cold light afloat in the murk of the cosmos. Last night, I read about the doctors who removed 526 teeth from a boy's dying jaw. Hours in, they feared there was no end to it, that his pain was infinite, their hands trapped. Bits of white bone arrayed in a spiral beside his sleeping face, and it was lovely and an evidence of the divine. Well, not really. Maybe you aren't listening to the wind as it goes through the night, like a sad prayer beneath a stippled sky. Maybe, just maybe, things will get better. Give it a year. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Paul. Wow. Thanks so much. Again, get some of Paul's work. You can order it online. You can go into the to BookBeat or the online independent bookstore place. So thanks, Paul. That was wonderful. And when things get back to normal, if it ever will be normal again, you've got to come to Detroit. You've got to come here. A lot of people really like your work, and they're out there right now listening to it. So thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Next, I want to bring up Joe Kidd and Sheila Burke. I'll read you just a little bit of information so that for those who don't know the two of them, they're pretty well known around Detroit here. Joe Kidd and Sheila Burke, since 2012, Joe Kidd and Sheila have worked together as multimedia artists. Examples, they have received multiple Detroit Music Awards as Songwriters of the Year, 2020 Vocal Duo of the Year from International Singer-Songwriter. In 2017, Joe was inducted into the Michigan Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They have brought the crusade for, and this is what's really a key point about Joe and Sheila, the crusade for peace, social justice, cultural diversity across America and beyond. They've appeared in 26 states, 12 countries across North America and across Europe, Western Europe. They have a recording out, Everyone Has a Purpose, received airplay and excellent reviews on every continent. Both are published authors. Sheila was the first volume of her children's series, Just Want to Be Myself, in 2018. And Joe just released his first book, The Invisible Waterhole, last spring. So please welcome to the stage, Joe Kidd and Sheila Burke. Thanks.
Thank you, ML. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with surrounded by these great artists. And I want to thank you for allowing us to do this. But we're going to sing a couple of songs. But seeing as how it is World Poetry Day, I'm going to read the shortest poem in my book. And it's called, I Shall Write to You in My Sleep. I shall write to you in my sleep. While others sleep, I shall sing to you. Read to you from a wrinkled parchment fading behind my tired eyes. It is unusual that you lie alone while letters fall from an open sky. A man driving home, a countryside, the limit of a city where futures hide. There is the church. I will leave you there. Remove your hat, your coat, your shoes. Take off your clothes to hold a thought, your secrets held beneath the cotton. This event of strings eventually, this giveaway, this silent chord. If I awaken not on tomorrow's morn, yet tonight I roam the unmeasured mile, I shall write to you in my sleep. Now we're going to sing a couple of songs, folk songs. And Sheila, why don't you tell them about this one?
This one was written recently. It's a reflection on this last year of pandemic, and we hope that it encourages someone out there, hopefully everyone. And I'm going to let the lyrics tell the story. So it's called Here in My Heart, I'm on the Right Track, also known as the Ballad of Alex and Luli. Here we go. Sometimes I am a singer with nowhere to sing. I am a dreamer with nowhere to dream. I am a drummer with nowhere to drum. I am a player with nowhere to strum. But here in my heart I go on. And here in my heart is my song. There's no one to stop me, no one to hold me back. Here in my heart I know I'm on the right track. Alex and Luli at school one day. Alex forgot his homework, he just likes to play. They took a shortcut down by the old train track. Now they've spent a lifetime trying to get back. And here in my heart I go on. Oh, here in my heart is my song. No one can stop me, no one can hold me back. Here in my heart I know I'm on the right track. Now I am a singer with everywhere to sing, and I am a dreamer within my heart to dream. That old train keeps running like a song in my mind. I've walked that old train bridge 100,000 times, and here in my heart I go on. Oh, here in my heart is my song. No one can stop me, no one can hold me back. Here in my heart, I'm on the rack. And here in my heart, oh, here in my mind, it's all within my reach. I am the driver, in my soul is the drive. You and me, look and see, we'll teach and reach, drum and strum, sing and dream, and on and on. And here in our hearts we'll go on, yes we will. Oh, here in our hearts we'll go on. No one can stop us, no one can hold us back. Here in our hearts we know we're on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. The next one that we're going to do began as an Irish song of independence, but I believe it fits our gathering here today. It's called Free Men Alive. We come from the land where the Druids where the men are still brave, and the women they say are the prettiest you've ever seen. We would sing in our hearts while the children played, and the angels were testing their wings. But the songs in our bellies were of hunger and pain, politicians, of preachers and kings. We are free men alive, and we have survived despite every effort to wipe the slate clean. Free men alive, we will not be denied of the glory that follows our dream. We stood there with Collins, we stood there with Sands, we stood with our rifle and our rosary in hand. We stood in defiance and defense of our land. We will stand in confession to the very last man. We are free men alive, emancipation forged in the blood of our brothers and sons. Free men alive, that's our proclamation, dear mother, what have we done? So we pray for the souls of the dearly departed, the stories and legends so dear. We will suffer their loss and rise up the stronger before we all disappear. We are free men alive, and we will survive while the pipers are piping and the drummers keep time. Free men alive, with the saints at our side, and the poets are singing their rhyme. We are free men alive, emancipation forged in the blood of our brothers and sons. Free men alive, that's our proclamation, dear mother, what have we done? Holy Mother, what have we done?
Thank you, Joe
Thank
Kidd
you.
and Sheila Burke. You know, I have to say, Joe, that that's the best sound I've ever heard over a Zoom. So you guys must have your studio set up just right, because the balance was good and it was perfect.
Thank you.
There wasn't a lot of that, herky jerky. It was perfect. So thank you. Thank you very much.
ML. Thank
Once
you
again-
all. Thank you everybody for what they're doing out there.
So Joe Kidd and Sheila Burke, look them up on Spotify and places where you can buy music online, and support. Joe's book is out, and also the children's book was out in 2018, or at least the first installment. Next up is a special guest, someone I met many years ago in the desert. That sounds kind of biblical. And in Palm Springs at one of the AWP. I know some of you guys were at that too. And I've always been a fan of his. He has some family in Detroit, as I discerned back then and talking again. He is a multi-talented writer. He has a new book that I want to make sure people pick up on, which is his book about his years studying with Elizabeth Bishop and others. So Dana Gioia, internationally acclaimed poet and writer, former California Poet Laureate, and also chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts. Gioia was born in Los Angeles of Italian and Mexican descent, and for 15 years he's worked as a businessman before quitting at 41 to become a full-time writer. The man has a number of books. The newest one, as I mentioned, is the memoir. He has a great book of essays on the Catholic poet. He's a spiritual man. He is a prayerful man. And I'm just proud to say that he's a friend of mine. Please welcome Dana Gioia.
Well, I guess it's now just good afternoon from here, because I'm 3 hours behind you. I was a little confused. I'm sorry, I was a few minutes late. I kept thinking you were on Midwestern time. I was delighted to get the invitation from Detroit because my dad was from Detroit. Even though I was raised in LA, I was raised rooting for the Tigers, which was a lonely calling, out in LA. And so listening to Joe and Sheila, it occurred to me I should read different things than I had planned. And so I'm going to read about maybe 6, 7 poems. 3 or 4 of them were actually written for music. I have collaborated with, I don't know how many composers and songwriters over the years. And my feeling about poetry is that poetry is a kind of song. It is speech raised to the level of song, of music. So I'll begin with a very California poem. This was written for Helen Sung, a jazz pianist. And it's a poem about LA, which is the city of beautiful people. People go there to live off their beauty. And this is a poem or a song about the power of beauty and what happens to beauty. It's called Pity the Beautiful. Pity the beautiful, the dolls and the dishes, the babes with big daddies granting their wishes. Pity the pretty boys, the hunks and Apollos, the golden lads whom success always follows, the hotties, the knockouts, the 10s out of 10, the drop dead gorgeous, the great leading men. Pity the faded, the bloated, the blousy, the paunchy Adonis whose luck's gone lousy. Pity the gods, no longer divine. Pity the night, the stars lose their shine. I don't think that poem needs any explanation, but it is, I think it's very true, at least a very California poem. I want to read a poem about my dad now. I don't tend to write about family members. In fact, I wrote an early poem about my mother, and she said, if I ever wrote another one, she'd kill me. And so, I respect their privacy, but when your parents die, you experience, and many of us, I'm sure, have had that. You have to go to the house and clear it out. You have to go through everything they owned, and you review their lives, like it or not. I lost my first son. I think after losing, my son, it was the whole process of losing my parents that's been the toughest thing in my life. And this is about that. It only needs one footnote, which is if you go back to World War II, if you wanted to mail a postcard, a penny was what the stamp cost. And so the penny postcard. Finding a box of family letters. The dead say little in their letters they haven't said before. We find no secrets, and yet how different every sentence sounds heard across the years. My father breaks my heart simply by being so young and handsome. He's half my age with jet black hair. Look at him in his Navy uniform, grinning beside his dive bomber. Come back, Dad, I want to shout. He says he misses all of us, though I haven't yet been born. He writes from places I never knew he saw, and every one he mentions now is dead. There is a large, long photograph curled like a diploma, a banquet 60 years ago. My parents sit uncomfortably among tables of dark suited strangers. The mildewed paper reeks of regret. I wonder what song the band was playing just out of frame as the photographer arranged your smiles. A waltz, a foxtrot. Get out there on the floor and dance. You don't have forever. What does it cost to mail a postcard to the underworld? I'll buy a penny stamp from World War II and mail it at the downtown post office, just as the old courthouse clock strikes 12. Surely the ghost of some postal worker still makes his nightly rounds, his routine too tedious for him to notice when it ended. He works so slowly, he moves back in time, carrying our dead letters to their lost addresses. It's silly to get sentimental, but isn't it also equally simple-minded to miss the special expertise of the departed in clarifying our long-term plans? They never let us forget that the line between them and us is only temporary. Get out there and dance, the letters shout, adding, love always, can't wait to get home. And soon we shall be. See you there. That's probably a poem that most of you have lived. I was interested when Mona recited her poems. And I noticed that she did something that I think is very instinctive. When I say Mona, do you have to point to yourself? So, yeah. What she did is she hit a beat on every word. A lot of her lines were iambic. They'd go dum, da dum, da dum, da dum, but you went dun, 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 dun. And I think it's a very natural thing to do. You know, it's like the international rock, rhythm and bands where they actually hit every beat. And I've been working with jazz musicians, and so it's interesting in a sense to write to a beat. With Helen's song, I wanted to write an up-tempo song, but also I wanted a song like Pity the Beautiful that works as a song, works recited, and works on the page. This is one called Hot Summer Night. See, Mona, I hit every beat on the title. Let's go downtown. It's a hot summer night. Lovers are sitting in sidewalk cafes, breaking up, making up, hooking up, cooking up plans that would leave you amazed. Let's go downtown. It's a hot summer night. Let's not stay home and get in a fight. Let's eat spicy food in a dark little dive and let our bodies know they're alive. Summer has come. The young are on fire, and every tattoo spells a word for desire. They're strolling as naked as custom allows. They never say later. They only say now. Let's live in the flesh and not on a screen. Let's dress like people who want to be seen. Don't bring me home till the dawn's early night. Let's not waste this hot summer night. So, and I think one of the interesting things, it's true when I write narrative poems. It's true when I write words for operas. It's true when I write songs. When you get yourself into a different form, you explore a different part of your creativity. Here's a more traditional poem, and in fact, it's a highly traditional poem because it's a sonnet, although I hope it doesn't sound like one. For years, ML knows I've been a very controversial person in American poetry, and I've been attacked so many times. I mean, people just love to attack me, and I take that as a kind of compliment. I disturb their complacency, and one of the things that I was attacked for years was for writing sonnets. Now, the interesting thing is I'd never written a sonnet. I'd never published a sonnet, but people said, well, he's a formal poet. We don't like formal poets. And so the guy must be writing a sonnet. Why bother to read his poetry before you attack him? So finally, after a couple of books, I said, I really should write a sonnet just to be fair to my enemies. And so this is what I wrote. I took the oldest metaphor practically in poetry, which is the notion of the road as the journey of life. The path is the journey, through time. The road. He sometimes felt that he had missed his life by being far too busy looking for it. Searching the distance, he often turned to find that he had passed some milestone unaware, and someone else was walking next to him. First friends, then lovers, now children and a wife. They were good company, generous, kind, but equally bewildered to be there. He noticed then that no one chose the way. All seemed to drift by some collective will. The path grew easier with each passing day, since it was worn and mostly sloped downhill. The road ahead seemed distant in the gloom. Where was it he had meant to go? And with whom? Now, I thought, once again, since Joe and Sheila sang essentially ballads, I thought I would read a ballad. Now, having said that I don't write a lot about my family, this is a poem about my family, but 2 generations back. It's about the life and death of my great-grandfather on the Mexican side. His name was Jesus Ortiz, and he was a vaquero, a cowboy. And when I was 10, I was at my Mexican grandfather's. We didn't go over there a lot because he was a fairly temperamental drunk, and all his kids had fled early on. And he went up to me and says, "How old are you?" And I told him I was 10. He says, when I was 10, I left school. And I knew that. I knew both of my grandfathers had only gone to 4th grade. But what I didn't know was what he said next. He said, "Yeah, when my dad got shot, I had to become a cowboy." And that I didn't know. And so I heard the story, but I never quite believed it because my grandfather was a bullshit artist. You couldn't trust half of what he said. But I picked up pieces of it over the years, and it did seem to be true. And finally, I was in Wyoming, and I was giving a speech in Wyoming to all the library, arts, and humanities people. This is when I was NEA chairman. And I pointed out that the last relative of mine who had come through that area had been murdered. And there was this, afterwards, this very stern woman came up to me and began quizzing me. She was clearly unhappy that I was defaming Wyoming. And I learned afterwards that she was the state librarian. And then about a month later, at my office in Washington, came this package of documents chronicling my great-grandfather's death, the murder, and the trial of the murderer. And I realized it was all true. And I felt I had to write about it, but I couldn't figure out how. I realized it should be a ballad. I'm sorry that's such a long-winded introduction, but to write a cowboy ballad, in the 21st century for a literary poet is a kind of, it's just not done. And so I wrote it, but I didn't publish it. I just didn't show it to anybody. And finally, a producer from the BBC was doing a documentary about me being California Poet Laureate and visiting to all 58 counties of California. And he asked me what I've been working on, and I gave him a couple of things. I said, I'm gonna get this thing, I'm not publishing it. And he loved it, and he decided to do another show about it on the BBC. And then I published it. It's actually one of the most popular poems I've ever been published. It has even been translated, God help me, I'm not making this up, into Vietnamese. I'm not sure I understand that. The Ballad of Jesus Ortiz. Everything in this poem, every name, every place, every incident is true. The Ballad of Jesus Ortiz. Jake's family were vaqueros. They worked the cattle drives down from Montana to Market. They did what it took to survive. Jake's real name was Jesus, which the Anglos found hard to take. So after a couple of days, the cowboys called him Jake. When Jake was 12, his father brought him along to ride. Don't waste your youth in the pueblo. Earn by your father's side. The days were long and toilsome, but all the crew got fed, and it wasn't hard to sleep on the ground when you'd never had a bed. 3,000 head of cattle grazing the prairie grass, 3,000 head of cattle pushed through each mountain pass, 3,000 head of cattle fording the muddy streams, and then 3,000 phantoms bellowing in your dreams. At nights, when the coyotes called, Jake would often weep, recalling how his mother would sing her children to sleep. But when he rose in the morning, the desert air was sweet. No sitting in a mission school with bare and dusty feet. And when the drive was over, he got his pay. And then he came back to the pueblo where he was one of the men. 10 years on the open range, he led the vaquero's life, far from his home in Sonora, no children and no wife. Then Jake headed north to Wyoming to earn his winter keep among the Basques and Anglos who raised and slaughtered sheep. He came to cold, lost cabin where the rattlesnake mountains rise over the empty foothills, under the rainless skies. The herders lived in dugouts or sheds of pine and tar. The town had 7 buildings. The biggest was the bar. John Oakey owned the town, the sheep king of Wyoming. He owned the herds, he owned the land, and every wild thing roaming. He hired Jake for his tavern. He let him sleep in the kitchen. Mexicans worked hard and didn't waste time bitching. Tending bar was easier than tending cattle drives. Jake poured the drinks while the men complained about their lives. Jake asked them questions. He knew what he needed to know. Men working in the lost cabin had nowhere else to go. Jake married a sheep herder's daughter, half Indian, half white. They had 2 sons, and finally, things in his life were right. He told his boys his adventures as a cowboy riding the plain. "Papa," they cried, "will you take us when you ride out again?" One night, he had an argument with a herder named Bill Howard, a deserter from the border war, a drunkard and a coward. "Bring over that bottle of whiskey. If you don't get it, I will." Oakey said to cut you off until you pay your bill. Bill Howard slammed his fist down. "Is that some goddamn joke? A piss-poor Mexican peon telling me, a little after midnight, Bill came back through the door. 3 times he shot his rifle, and Jake fell to the floor. Then Bill beheld his triumph as the smoke cleared from the air, a mirror blown into splinters, and blood splattered everywhere. A sudden brutal outburst no motive could explain. One poor man killing another, without glory, without gain. The tales of Western heroes show duels in the noonday sun, but darkness and deception is how most killings done. Father Keller came from Lander to lay Jake in the ground. A posse searched the mountains until Bill Howard was found. There were 2 more graves in Wyoming when the clover bloomed in the spring. 2 strangers drifted into town and filled the openings, and 2 tall boys departed for the cattle drives that May, with hardly a word to their mother, who watched them right away. So, it took 105 years, but, I finally gave form to a story that had not been told. I'll read just 2 more short poems to end up. The first is about my son. When you lose a child, it's the worst thing that can happen to you. But something strange happens, which is ever thereafter, when you see a kid, and this is a little like Paul Guest, I guess, instead of writing a poem each year about his life, which it puts into perspective this catastrophe that happened in his youth. When you see another kid that would be about the same age as your son, you say, that's what my son would look like. That's what he would be doing. And so your son has a kind of phantom childhood that you see in the bodies of strangers. This is called Majority because it was written on what would have been my son's 21st birthday. Now you'd be 3. I said to myself, seeing a child born in the same summer as you. Now you'd be 5 or 7 or 10. I watched you grow in foreign bodies, leaping into a pool, all laughter, or frowning over a keyboard, but mostly just standing, taller each time. How splendid your most mundane activities were in these joyful proxies. I often held back tears. Now you are 21. Finally, it makes sense that you have moved away into your own afterlife. And then I'm just going to end with a love poem to my wife. And it's also a poem, it's about when you're with someone, when you're married to someone, the 2 of you begin to create a private language. It's a language of words, of touches, of looks, of gestures, of allusions, and it is the most intimate dialect, the most remarkable patois that you'll ever have with anyone in the world. And it's so wonderful that even your kids can't fully penetrate it. It's a kind of, foreign tongue. And it reminded me that it's a lot like one of these California Indian languages that are only spoken by 2 or 3 people now. And when those people die, the language goes, the songs go, the dances go, because it's so fragile, just the way that this language of lovers is fragile. Marriage of many years. Most of what happens beyond words. The lexicon of lip and fingertip defies translation into common speech. I recognize the musk of your dark hair. It always thrills me, though I can't describe it. My finger on your thigh does not touch skin. It touches your skin, warming to my touch. You are a language I have learned by heart. This intimate patois will vanish with us. It's only native speakers. Does it matter? Our tribal chants, our dances round the fire performed the sorcery we most required. They bound us in a spell time could not break. Let the young vaunt their ecstasy. We keep our tribe of two in sovereign secrecy. What must be lost was never lost on us. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Dana. A great reading. Good
Well,
readings.
Thank you, Moon, for trying to keep up with me. I mean, I gave you a lot going on there.
She did, and I just, it gives me a chance to say to the Facebook people who are viewing there, where there's a lot of people, that when this is over, I will upload the side by side. So Mona Jean's signing will not be lost to the internet's hollow dark hole, whatever.
I think you should have danced. I think that would have
I
been.
know. I started.
Just dance along with,
So here's what we should do, Dana. One thing is not to put you on the spot, but in the future, we should have just, especially with your new book, just a kind of conversation with people out there and reading from your book, and kind of just do a solo show in that sense, because the new book is great. I've seen you read from it. What's the title so people know?
Well, there's two. I mean, I think it would be interesting to talk about the prose book, Studying with Miss Bishop, because it's a book about how I became a writer, and how I became a writer, which is, obviously it's through individual determination and inclination, but it was also through other people. And I learned to be a writer through love, through the friendship and love of people, who sometimes without even understanding how much they were doing for me, opened up all kinds of doors of possibility. And I think it's a story that most writers, can identify with, and they can. I mean, it's interesting. I can't tell you how many people have read the book and they write me saying now they're working on their own book. Yeah. I think that actually the good thing about this book, besides the fact that it's really interesting, is that it calls forth the stories that other people have. And so, I will be delighted to see, some of the children, I guess, of Studying with Miss Bishop, because I talk about Miss Bishop, Robert Fitzgerald, John Cheever, James Dickey is a kind of comic figure in it, and so that then the most recent book of poems is 99 poems. They wanted me to do selected poems. I think it looked like 66 poems or something like that, in reverse mirror. And I just said, well, I'm going to give myself an abstract number, 99, and I'm going to limit the poems to that. I had a couple hundred poems, and I thought it was very good. People say, well, you dropped my favorite poem. And I say to myself, that's probably better than putting in 20 poems you didn't like, so, but 99 poems is the other book. And one of the things that's interesting about it has a whole section of poems that are essentially short stories, which is something that I like to do. The Ballad of Jesus Ortiz was a little bit of that.
Well, you're that's right. I've got both of those books, but as you were reading, I thought I'm going after this to grab the 99 poems, but it also inspired me because I'm sort of doing not a new and selected, but more of a selected. And I was thinking, but I don't want it to be selected. And then I keep the idea of 99 poems. So I thought, maybe it just either 100 poems or, 85 or something, but other than the new and selected title for it.
Well, the other thing I did, that surprised people, and because usually here's the thing, if you do new and selected poems, what order do you put the poems in? Sometimes people put the new ones first. They put the books in backwards. You put and I just think it's very confusing. So I said, forget about chronology. Paul, do you care about the chronology of my poems? No, you don't. It's like, you care about whether it's a poem you like or you don't. Is Mona gonna sign an early poem different from a later poem? No, she's not. And so I took the poems, and rather than put them chronologically, I put them by theme. So I built the poem around, and I'll just give you the section titles: mystery, place, remembrance, imagination, stories, songs, and you know where it's going to end: love. And so, because as ML says, I write a lot about, spiritual experience, about religious experience. And so that's in the mystery section. I'm from a place that I identify with really strongly. It's the place. But I think, most people could take their work and say, I tend to cluster my work on several subjects. And maybe I let, I think it's better for the reader to sort of enter you through subject, through theme, than it is to say, well, here's the first poem I wrote, here's the last poem I wrote, and here's everything in between in order. That's interesting to your biographer. It's interesting to the person writing a book on you, but I don't think it's as interesting to the average reader. The average reader goes, my girlfriend dumped me last week. I'm brokenhearted. I want to read a love poem, or, oh God, I miss my mother who died last. I have a lot of physical problems. So I go to a Pilates physical therapist, and she just spends, every time I talk to her, she just talks about her mother who died 2 years ago. And that's still a fresh wound for her, And so it seems to me, when we write poems, we're trying to speak to people and speak from our situation to theirs in a way that illuminates, theirs. Paul talks about his body burning, and I know exactly what he's saying. It's when the nerves die, you have this burn, that you experience, and it's mysterious. I didn't have, I had a couple of traumatic things, nothing even in the same universe as Paul, but his poems even, spoke to me, to my experience of my body, to these things, in ways which were illuminating. And so, so I don't feel when I write, it's about my story. It's about creating our story together. Okay. And I just thought that was, when I did my 99 poems, I sort of said, how can I create our stories? How can I create our experience? A book that a stranger feels comfortable opening up. Because it's very difficult to write, say, oh my God, here's a book of 99 poems. What am I gonna do with it? Anyway. I was buying it, but I would go for an odd number. I'd go 99 or 101.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. No,
Don't do 100. Don't do 100.
No. But we'll do that session. And in the meantime, we can make it like a library project. Everyone can get the Writing with Miss Bishop book. It's not real thick, so it's a quick read. And really interesting insight, Dana, into you as a poet as well, and going to something you started out with, the image that people have sometimes of Dana Gioia in the poetry universe. They have one image of this, and other people have this other image with your NEA work and so forth. But one thing I'm always thinking about, and maybe I do know it, but you were in the advertising business. Was it General Mills?
I was in food business. I worked for General Foods. And so I did everything from production, quotas to formula rules and every part of it. So, things like Jello pudding, country time lemonade, baker's chocolate. I mean, desserts and beverages is what I did. I sold small pleasures for 15 years.
Well, see, now that even that general food got translated somewhere, I heard it, General Mills. So I thought, he works for a cereal company.
Well, I worked one summer for General Mills. So it's, that to further confuse everybody. I've done too many things. I've lived in too many places in my life. It's just too, confusing. And I've refused to be a creative writing teacher, which is usually they say, so-and-so was here, they went to school and they teach there. That's the biography of the contemporary poet, and, so I was in business, I was in politics, I've been in the arts, I've worked with musicians. I mean, so it's, and I'm just, I've tried to make a living in interesting ways.
And since you mentioned musician and you're writing the songs too, I think it's good to point out to folks who might not know is Dana's brother Ted Gioia is sort of the master scholar of jazz, and especially Western jazz or the West Coast scene, which for whatever reasons, maybe my love of and hanging around Los Angeles, but I really like West Coast jazz. And when I was there listening, I did. Well, that's what I did when I mean, this goes back 20 years, but I'm listening to stuff by Shelley Mann and all these people. And I thought, I got to read something on it. I go to Barnes and Noble on Hawthorne Boulevard at the time. And
I was raised one block off Hawthorne Boulevard.
I saw that. You know who else is from there is Emmett Rhodes. I don't know if you know this.
He just died.
He just died.
Yeah, he just wouldn't come out of his house for the last, 30 years of his life.
I know. I love
songwriter.
that. I've always been a big fan of his, and he's one of the mysterious.
The better known band from Hawthorne is called the Beach Boys.
You're right. That's right. Now that I've been by that place too.
But my brother Ted is the smart Gioia.
But if you want to know West Coast jazz, which I recommend, Ted Gioia is the book to get. It's a nice thick book with a lot of good information as I was exploring that new world. Anyway, thank you so much, Dana. We will do this with you. I want to thank Paul and Joe and Sheila and also the student who read at the beginning, Meena, and Carolyn Walker, who joined us today. So thanks to all of you. This is the All Access Cafe. Once again, I would just mention that the side-by-side signing, Mona Jean outdid herself and did the whole thing. She's still doing it. And you'll see all of that. So until next time, the next reading that I'm doing in the living room series will be on Wednesday, March 31st. And it will be 4 of the writers Allen Ginsberg had knighted or deemed the future of beats, but we're all old now anyway. David Cope and Andy Clausen and Danny Schatz will be there, and Pamela Twining from up in Woodstock. So thank you all. This has been a great reading and worth rewatching again for sure.
Goodbye, everyone. Good to meet you all.
Thank you. Thanks, folks. Thank you, Mona Jean. God bless you. Bye-bye.